Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. My name is Steve Ryko. I'm with NES. NES is a consulting firm. We also do environmental health and safety training. So that's who I am, and we're here to learn about, understand some of the upcoming changes to the HAZCOM program. Now, just so I'm familiar with my audience, who here is from private industry? Okay, nice. Regulators, everyone else, okay. Man, all the private industry folks sat up front. Oh. All right, well, welcome everyone. Now, if you folks have any questions, comments, concerns, please do not hesitate to ask them as we go through this program. But just know this is being videotaped, so there is a chance, potential, your question or you personally may appear on the video of this program. So just keep that in mind. There are plenty of seats up front, folks. In great timing, we were just getting started. All right, so we're going to talk about hazard communication, globally harmonized system. Now, what we're going to focus on, cover today, is there anyone who is a chemical manufacturer, makes, distributes chemicals? Okay, no, good. Then this is so easy, so simple, so straightforward for us. Even regulators, businesses, whatever the case is, we have hazardous materials at our locations, our facilities, employees may use, handle, be exposed to. Therefore, we have to have a HAZCOM program. And part of the requirement of the HAZCOM program, the labeling requirements, MSDSs. Now, for our purposes, other than how things are going to be labeled by the chemical manufacturer, and the format, the layout of the material safety data sheet, nothing is going to change for us personally. With one exception, we will have to provide training for our employees, and a couple years down the road, we also have to revise, update our written HAZCOM program just to spell out the new labeling system and the new MSDS formats. But as far as determining if something is a hazardous material, classifying it, nothing changes for our purposes. All we have to do is when we see these new labels with the new pictograms, we have to ensure that our employees are familiar with the hazards associated with those materials. So that's it. I'll see you guys. No, we're not doing that. I'm shooting for all fives, right? I guess if we expedite it, yeah, I mean, I'm going to have fives across the board. All right. Now, a little background information. Existing laws and regulations similar. OSHA is changing how things are labeled and the safety data sheet format. We are no longer national. We're international, so the standards that are being implemented, these will help us, assist us if materials are shipped overseas or if they're received from overseas. So these are international standards. How it's done in the United States is how it's going to be done across the world. And this is just some background information. One thing that OSHA is doing for the new HAZCOM program, the changes with the labels and the SDSs, is that they are coming up with some definitive definitions for how chemical manufacturers determine if something is flammable, if it's corrosive, if it's an oxidizer, et cetera. And they have all of those requirements spelled out. But again, for us personally, doesn't affect us because it's not our responsibility to determine if it's flammable, if it's labeled as such. We just have to ensure our employees are familiar with the hazards associated with those materials. Now, what the system's going to do, enhance protection in human health and the environment, recognize framework, reduce the need for testing and evaluation of chemicals, facilitate international trade. So again, GHS, globally harmonized systems. How we do things here in the United States is going to be the same way that things are done internationally. So that is the intent of these regulations. Now, June 1st, 2015, This is when chemical manufacturers have to come into compliance. This is when they have to start using the new labeling system and provide safety data sheets when we order, purchase hazardous materials. So that's when ultimately this will affect us as employers. Now, full disclosure, these are the Fed OSHA HAZCOM requirements. Cal OSHA has not adopted or amended this standard in any way. So this is Fed OSHA. This isn't outlined in Title 8, 5194, but this is at the Fed level. And if Cal OSHA doesn't adopt it, guess what we have to do anyway? We have to comply, right? At a minimum with those federal standards. So now this is very important. Those of you that are taking notes, jot these dates down because this is the phase-in transition period. Now, the thing that's going to affect us first and foremost, December 1st of this year, OSHA says that employees must be trained, new labeling system, and the safety data sheets. So that is what will affect us first and foremost. Now, you guys are here today. Guess what we're going to cover? Safety data sheets, the new labels. Guess what you guys have accomplished? Your training. Your training. How about that? That was worth the price of admission, right? All right. Okay. All right, so training is accomplished. June 1st, 2015. And this is for the chemical manufacturers. They have to begin using the labeling system. We're going to look at those labels. They have to begin providing safety data sheets when they ship out hazardous materials, when we order those. So that's when they are affected. Now, June 1st, 2016, this is when, as an employer, we have to come into compliance with all the regulations. So this is going to require us, again, to revise, update our HAZCOM program, our yellow binder, MSDS binder. We're going to have to trash that. We're going to replace that with our SDS binder. So we have to transition all those. Now, what OSHA is allowing us to do up until June of 2016 is that we could comply with these revised standards, or we could comply with what is currently in regulation. So it doesn't affect us. With the one exception, December 1st of this year, employees must be trained. Now, what I would recommend to you guys, PowerPoints are available, website, download those PowerPoints, have your employees review them. Guess what your employees just accomplished? They're training. They're videotaping it. They're going to post a video. You want to punish your employees and accomplish training? Sit them in front of the computer, have them watch this. They have been trained, so there are some outlets for you guys to accomplish this training. So these dates are very important. June 1st, December 1st, that is the nearest date, so we want to ensure that we accomplish this training. Now, what's going to happen with the system? Criteria for classifying hazardous materials. Now, we'll look at some of those benchmarks that OSHA is using. But again, that's not something that is necessarily germane to us. We just have to be aware of, hey, what is this label? What does it mean? What does it include? What's considered flammable, etc. But these are the definitions, the benchmarks, the criteria that are going to be used by the chemical manufacturers. And then HAZCOM elements with our labeling and our safety data sheets. That is probably one of the coolest things that's happening with these revisions, is because now it doesn't matter who the chemical manufacturer is, the safety data sheets have to be laid out in a specific format. There's 16 sections. OSHA is going to require chemical manufacturers to use at least 12 of them. 12 of them are mandatory, 4 are optional, but they're all going to be in the same sequence, same order. So you look at section 1, doesn't matter who manufactured that chemical, same information, down to section 16. So that's potentially going to help us moving forward. Because in my experience, what I find when I go to a facility, it could be an auto shop, everything is covered in grease, with one exception, the MSDS binder. So this is a great tool for our employees to use, have access to in regards to hazards associated with those materials they're using, but it's seldom used and it is disjointed, they're hard to read in some cases, so we'll have a standardized format that OSHA is requiring. That is a good thing. All right. GAHS, not intended to harmonize risk assessment, but it just puts in those international standards across the board, labeling, how we classify materials, etc. Chemicals, potential adverse effects, people and the environment. And this information, I'm going to give you guys a website at the conclusion of this program. If you guys really want to digest this information, OSHA has what they call a purple book. It has a purple cover. It's 500 plus pages. And it is more so intended for chemical manufacturers because it breaks down exactly how these hazardous materials are classified. There's flow charts, what caution words are used, so all of that information is available to you so you guys could access that information. Again, I mean, if you're ever having trouble sleeping one night, you want to get to sleep, print that bad boy out and guaranteed you'll fall asleep. But I will provide you that information, that link. So this is just background on chemicals, and these definitions are within that blue book, the purple book, excuse me. It has these definitions. Substances, chemical elements, compounds, natural state, obtain any production process, including additive necessary to preserve stability. Mixture, solution composed of two or more substances, alloy, metallic material, homogeneous, macroscopic, scale consisting of two or more elements. And alloys are classified, considered to be mixtures within these new GHS standards. Consistency, and this is an example of the new label. So this is going to be a transition, something that's going to be slightly different for us, our employees, when they're handling these hazardous materials. These are labels that are used required by the manufacturer. Now, one thing that is going to be different are these pictograms that are included on these labels, and we'll go through what each pictogram means. Now, these pictograms, is anyone familiar with DOT regulations? Okay, if you look at these pictograms, and specifically that pictogram, it looks almost exactly like a DOT marine pollutant marking, right? Now, these markings, these OSHA labels, do not preclude you from using DOT labels. So these don't replace DOT labels, these are OSHA labels. So don't think that, hey, this picture is similar, I could use this in place of a marine pollutant marking. That is not the case. And the definitions, how OSHA classifies these materials, is not one and the same as how DOT classifies hazardous materials. The 9 different hazard classes that OSHA is going to use. And again, these hazard classes, these different classifications, the labeling system that is used looks similar to the DOT labeling system, but it is not one and the same. They don't replace each other. You can't use a DOT label in place of the OSHA label. You can't use the OSHA label in place of the DOT label. Now, we'll look at these 9 different classifications. In the one classification that is not mandatory by OSHA is the environmental hazard, which is the DOT marine pollutant marking. So OSHA says you're not mandated, chemical manufacturers are not mandated to use that, but that is a label that we have at our disposal so we could classify those materials.
Will they be using that internationally?
These are,
Environmental pictogram.
yes, yep. That is the whole intent that we're doing the globally harmonized standards. Just like DOT, they're going through globally harmonized systems. Some of our shipping descriptions with NAID numbers are being phased out. So those are in accordance with those international shipping standards. So absolutely, yes. Good question.
So you could get like drums of oil with a pictogram on it and you don't know what it is,
No, if you get a drum of oil, it's going to have one of these 9 pictograms on it. And after this class, you will know what it is. The environmental one. Oh, no. We'll qualify that for you. We'll qualify that for you. Good question, though. And just so you guys know, I kind of have a grading system I use on questions. Good, great, super. Oh my gosh, when we get a super question, we're done. That's like a walk-off home run. So keep the questions coming. Super, we're done, walk-off home run. Now, here is one of the first OSHA hazard classification. This is a flame label. In the different types of materials that will have this label associated with them are listed here. Flammable, self-reactive, pyrophoric, self-heating, emits flammable gas, organic peroxides. So any of these materials that meet these definitions, the manufacturer will affix this flammable label to the outside of that package. And again, this looks very similar to DOT Class 3 and Division 2.1 labels. It's not one and the same, and how OSHA classifies these materials is not one and the same how DOT classifies their hazardous materials. Now here are the definitions for materials that are identified with these labels per OSHA's classification system. Flammable gas having a flammable range with air at 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 101 kilopascals. Now, the definition that OSHA uses to define a flammable gas is 1, if it's mixed with air 13% less by volume, if it ignites or burns, it's considered flammable, or if it has a flammable range between the lower and the upper flammable limit of at least 12%. So any gases, compressed gases that meet these definitions, this label will be affixed to the outside of that package. Flammable liquid, a liquid that has a flash point of not more than 199 degrees Fahrenheit. Flammable solid, combustible, may cause or contribute through friction, it may burn, so those are flammable solids, so it may be a gas, it could be a liquid, it could be a solid material. So these are the designations used by OSHA. Self-reactive, unstable liquid, undergoes strong exothermic decomposition. Pyrophoric liquid, igniting within 5 minutes, coming in contact with air. Self-heating material, organic peroxides, which are derivatives of hydrogen peroxides. So any of these materials will be associated with a flammable label. So what do we tell our employees? Those materials probably present some sort of flammability hazard. So we want them to be aware of that. So that is information that we have to convey to our employees. And in addition to that, when we have those flammable gases, we have those flammable liquids, those also potentially present a high inhalation hazards to our employees. So we want to ensure that they're familiar with that as well. Any questions? Thank you.
So when we're educating our employees, we can't just show the pictogram and say this is a flammable material. We have to go through each one of those areas that you went through?
Super good question. No. You know what? OSHA doesn't say that they have to know the flash point. They just have to know the hazards associated with those materials.
They just have to know that
Yeah,
this pictogram
yeah.
is a flammable material.
There you go. And it may be at your facility you have flammable gas, but not oxidizers. They don't need to know about oxidizers, right? They need to know about those materials within their workplace that they may come in contact or be exposed to. So yeah. In flash point, I mean, if you tell someone that it has a flash point of less than 199 degrees, they may not even understand what that means. Just tell them, hey, don't smoke by it. Make sure there's no ignition sources. So, or give them that 500-page purple book. Have them read that. No. They just have to be aware of the hazards. That was a good question, though. Good question. All right, flame over circle, this is for oxidizers. So if we have this label, what happened to your colleague?
He's going to go get the fantastic question.
Okay, he's gonna think, you know what, a fantastic question. I've been waiting my entire career for a fantastic question. So, okay, good deal, good deal. Now this symbol presents oxidizers, oxidizing gas, oxidizing liquids. These evolve oxygen, they produce oxygen, etc. So these are oxidizers. So we see that label, the O with the flame over the top. We just want our employees to be aware, understand that those are oxidizing substances. And they should know at a minimum, if we see, heavy lunch, if they see, no problem, no problem. If they see that flammable label, and we potentially have materials that are considered oxidizers, and we have those oxidizer labels, we probably, again, we don't have to qualify the chemistry behind it, but just make sure that they're aware. Oxidizers, we want to keep those separated from our flammables. What do we need for a fire? Fuel, flammables, right? Oxygen or oxidizers, so we want to keep those separated. Yes, sir.
Hey, Steve, are these only for on the containers and the sheets, or are there area warnings also within our facilities, garages, areas?
That is a great question.
And then to follow up with that, is there any discussion on the differences between these and what NFPA requires and going to
Make it consistent.
Yeah.
This is purely driven by OSHA.
Okay.
So this doesn't have anything to do with NFPA. And as far as the labeling of the areas using NFPA diamonds, that isn't addressed. This is only the labels that when a chemical manufacturer produces a hazardous material, they have to identify it based on the hazards associated with it and affix the appropriate label.
So really, we're talking about something small that you can see close up, but you can't see from 100 feet across the shop floor.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with this labeling system, if we remove materials from a primary container, we put it in a secondary container, OSHA says we don't have to use these labels on secondary containers. We could still employ whatever labeling system we use, whether it's a HMIS label, if we use our own internal labels, so that isn't going to change. That isn't going to change. This is only for chemical manufacturers, only for chemical manufacturers.
Can you give an example of an oxidizing gas, like
Oxygen.
home? With
Nitrous oxide, oxygen. Hydrogen peroxide is a oxidizing liquid. Yep. Bleach is a mild oxidizer. So you'll see these labels associated with those oxidizers. Exclamation mark, this is not a DOT marking or a DOT label, but this exclamation mark identifies irritants, dermal sensitizers, acute toxicity, narcotic effects, respiratory tract irritants. So this exclamation mark is associated with those types of materials. Get it on your skin, it irritates you, acute toxicity, and there are standards, levels, thresholds, not for us to determine, but the chemical manufacturer to determine if it fails these fish bioassay tests, whether this label applies. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that it pretty much pertains to just stock containers from the manufacturer.
Yes.
You take it out, you have your own labeling system.
Yes.
Is that explicitly stated in the reg somewhere?
It is, yes. They say this labeling system is for chemical manufacturers. Employees have to be aware of them, but it does not affect or change whatever labeling system we employ. We comply with the OSHA HAZCOM standard as far as labeling those secondary containers. OSHA doesn't say that any of that secondary container labeling has to change, or we have to use these specific labels to come into compliance with the GHS standards. So these are labels used by the chemical manufacturer.
Well, at least for educational institutions where they make a lot of solutions, that's kind of like just get that standard, I guess, afterwards.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you a link to the purple book, and it states it in there. Yep, so everything you want to know in there. But I'll get you the citation from 1910, 1200. I will get you fact sheets so you have that information. Good question. Did you come back with a fantastic question? Your colleague said you...
I'm still on good.
Okay, you're still on good, okay. So our exclamation mark, irritant dermal, reversible damage to the skin, application test substance up to 4 hours. Irritant eye, production changes in the eye following application, 21 days, reversible effects. So these are the benchmarks. Again, you see that exclamation mark, we tell our employees what? Don't get it on your skin. Don't get it in your eyes. Don't inhale those vapors, those fumes. We just want them to be aware of the hazards. Dermal, sensitizer substances induce allergic response. Acute toxicity substance is harmful if ingested, inhaled, narcotic effect. A respiratory tract irritant, effects that impair functions with symptoms such as cough, pain, choking, etc. So this exclamation mark will be used associated with those materials. So it will be included. Yes, ma'am.
Are these associated with PELs or exposure limits in some way?
No, not necessarily, but for some of the benchmarks that we'll look at for the toxic materials, there are benchmarks as far as LD50 levels, et cetera, that determines if it is group 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But PEL, that is exposure limit, so it doesn't necessarily affect the labeling or what labeling is used. But there are specific benchmarks that a manufacturer has to determine what group it falls into.
Right.
Yeah.
Because your exposure, you can have these with a minor exposure to a certain chemical. Where's the cutoff between the irritant and the toxic? That label.
Now, for the toxic, they have LD50 thresholds. So that's what they use. Here, put something on your skin, leave it there for 4 hours. We're not going to do those tests. Those are done by the chemical manufacturer. Great question. Yes, sir.
Is there an additional label that's part of this that identifies whether the material is liquid, gas, solid, or is
That
it
is...
doesn't seem like it distinguishes?
It doesn't, because you could have a flammable, you could have an oxidizer, it could be a gas, flammable. So that information is included on the label because there is additional information that the manufacturer has to include on the label. So it isn't just going to be that you're going to see one of these labels and there's no other information. There is additional information, including keywords that identify the substance, etc. So that information will be made available on the label. Great question. Yes.
I think we've all seen something where it's inside the secondary containment and, the primary containment is leaked.
Uh-huh.
So my thought process is, since this global harmonization thing is new, has anybody given OSHA feedback that, I don't know, maybe secondary containment should be labeled, especially when it's something where it could be respiratory or something like that, where if you're opening it up and primary is leaked, it's really dangerous.
I could not tell you if anyone from industry has expressed those concerns to OSHA. But I mean, if that is something that you employ at your facility, part of the labeling system, you go above and beyond. One thing that we have to consider about in any regulations, not only these HAZCOM regulations, is that they're what? The minimum, right? This is the minimum of what's required. So if we have that primary container labeled, it's labeled by the manufacturer. When it comes to it, we've done our due diligence as an employer. Now, if that container leaks, I mean, obviously we have to clean it up. We don't want our employees exposed to it, but if we go above and beyond and label that secondary containment, we want to protect our employees as much as possible. The OSHA, this is just a bare minimum, bare minimum. Did I answer your question? No. Industry hasn't given OSHA that feedback. So. But if you choose to do it, that is nothing but a good thing for your employees. Nothing but a good
A lot
thing.
of companies that aren't going to they're not going to make any expenditures that are above and beyond what the minimal is.
especially in this current economy. We're doing more with less, so yeah. Was there another question? You don't have any questions?
No, but I thought a couple of these were super.
You thought? I know. You know what? I have been called out. Well, what's a super question? I don't know until I get it. Once I get it, it's just one of those things. You have a super question. Okay.
I have a training packet of placards and labels that I got from
J.J. Keller.
one of them
Yes,
companies.
yes.
Back in the 80s.
Okay.
And it has these placards in them. So was this used for airlines before? Because this
It-
is not new.
It has these placards, the exclamation or the red border.
No, it's Canada Class 9,
Canada Class 9. Yeah.
Canada
Yeah.
DOT.
Super answer. Yeah. Again, he's done. Walk up. Yeah, a lot of these labels, these pictographs, they are used or stolen from DOT. Yeah. So these aren't new. They look familiar, but how OSHA classifies them necessarily isn't the same how DOT classifies them. So it sounds like you're going to go back to your facility, pull out that training video, that binder from the 80s, and show it to your employees. Okay. Nice. All right, exploding bomb. Now, these are for explosive self-reactive materials. I imagine probably not a lot of us folks handle these materials, but if you see this, your employees just have to be aware they have explosives or explosive articles. And again, could be a liquid, it could be a solid material, but that information could be ascertained from what is included on the label, which is provided by the chemical manufacturer. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give an example of what would have that
What-
pictogram on it?
Picric acid. We don't use it. Fireworks. It could be ammunition. Yeah, it could be ammunition.
So were you teasing about the picric acid?
Yeah. No, I was teasing. But that is potentially something that is explosive. Yeah, it could be fireworks. It could be ammunition, shotgun shells, etc. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Excellent question. We're getting so close. Gosh, man, we may be done by 2:30. All right, corrosion. Now, corrosive to metal, corrosive to skin. And again, OSHA, they don't define it based on pH. It is ability to corrode metal or skin. That is how OSHA determines something to be corrosive, and corrosive material could be a solid, it could be a liquid. Again, our employees, they're just should be familiar with, you see this label, don't get it on your skin, right? What does the pictograph identify on that label? It burns skin on contact. It corrodes steel, it corrodes metal, so we want to avoid contact with those materials. Gas cylinder, these are gases under pressure. So if you have compressed gas, it will be identified with this symbol. Now this is one symbol that is definitive. Sir, you see this symbol? You know it's a gas. So this is a compressed gas. But again, it doesn't tell you necessarily if it is flammable, right? It is a compressed gas, so you may see an additional label. In actually what OSHA does have, they have some of their classification, hazards, subsidiary hazards is very similar to DOT because they actually have hierarchy charts to determine which one goes first, which is considered most hazardous, if something has a keywords danger or warning associated with it. So there is a hierarchy system within that OSHA Purple Book. But for us, manufacturer, it is dependent on the chemical manufacturer to label it. For us, employees handling it, we just have to be aware of those hazards associated with it. These are excellent questions. We're moving around. Any other questions? Has anyone seen these labels or this labeling system employed by a chemical manufacturer? You have? You have. So you receive chemicals and they've used these labels. Yep.
I'm starting to see
Im-
SDSs.
the SDS sheet.
Upgraded from the major chemical manufacturers.
Okay, nice, nice. So they're ahead of the curve. Ahead of the curve. Now you have till June of 2016 though before you have to get rid of your MSDSs and.
Pardon me, but there is as of the first of this year, there is a DOT requirement associated with GHS. Is there not?
In regards to the basic description,
That this information needs to be on, for DOT shipping.
now for DOT, the one requirement that went into effect this year for DOT is the sequence, which is in accordance with those global standards where you have a shipping name, hazard class, ID number, packing group. Now that four-digit ID number appears first, and that is how things are shipped internationally. So DOT is coming in line with that as of January 1st of this year. Yes.
There's no symbol requirement?
Symbol requirement, or DOT, excuse me, they have labeling requirements and marking requirements, but their 9 hazard classes and the associated divisions, those labels have not changed in the least, with the exception the Division 5.2 organic peroxide is red and yellow, as opposed to the old one was yellow. So
So if you're receiving materials that have these new pictograms on them,
yes,
when do you have to,
December 1st of this year, you have to train your employees.
but if you have the materials now with the pictograms, you can wait till December?
December is for training, actually.
December is for training.
Yeah, but like, isn't the requirement that if you have it now, that you need to train them now so they understand what the hazard is?
OSHA says employees must be trained by December 1st of this year.
But the question is, if you have the materials.
OSHA says employees must be trained by December 1st. So no, you have till December 1st, whether these new labels are being used by the chemical manufacturer or not. OSHA says employees must be trained by December 1st of this year. Because we still, in between now and 2016, we could comply with these standards or the current HAZCOM standards. One exception, December 1st of this year, employees must be trained. Is it a good idea? Absolutely. Are we going to do it because it takes more time and money? We're probably going to wait till December 1st. That's not a super answer.
No, because I have a question, because my company is going to give a training by March,
Okay.
and then you said that this need to be, educate the employee by December 15 of this year.
December 1st of this year, yes.
And so my question is that can we educate them now and then make all the labels, or?
OSHA says employees must be trained by December 1st of this year. March is before December 1st.
The labels, shall we change it? No.
You're not going to use these labels.
Oh, just
The chemical manufacturers, when you order these chemicals from a chemical manufacturer, are going to use these labels. Now, some of the folks are seeing these labels, so is it a good idea if you're seeing these at your facility to train your employees? Absolutely. Do you have to? Yes, by December 1st. By December
So
1st.
if you train them tomorrow, you're good. You train all your people in your facility tomorrow, you're good.
By December 1st. You're good. Yep. Today, you guys are being trained. This is before December 1st. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
We're fantastic. Yes.
super duper.
So, now you're grading me? Okay, I like that.
That wasn't great.
We have to fill out a form on you, you know that.
December 1st.
We got it.
December 1st. December 1st. Now, if I told you tomorrow, then you'd say, you lied to me. Or March, so December 1st. That's when employees have to be trained. All right, these are health hazards, carcinogens, respiratory, sensitizer, reproductive toxicity, target organ toxicity, mutagens, aspiration toxicities. So these represent those types of materials. Carcinogen, substance causes cancer. Respiratory sensitizer, substance that induces hypersensitivity to the airways, target organ, chemicals that target specific organ. Mutagen, mutations in the offspring, aspiration toxicity, liquid solid chemical into trachea. So these are those skull and crossbones, and again, this is probably easily identified, recognizable. Our employees are aware of this. Skull and crossbones, it is a toxic, poisonous material. Don't ingest it, taste it, touch it, etc. Acute toxicity, severe. Now, OSHA does have 5 categories for these toxic substances: oral, dermal, gases, vapors, dust, mists. Based on these different categories, there's 5 categories in each of them. And if it is a category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that is determined based on the toxicity of that material. If it is 2,500 parts per million, if it is toxic to 50% of the test population, then it would be a category 5 material for the oral. As the number goes down, the category goes up. So those are just different categories. So if you see category 5, those are the least toxic or the least hazardous. Category 1, those are the most hazardous. So skull and crossbones, hey guys, these are toxic materials, but you probably also want your employees to know category 1, that's highly toxic. Category 5, those materials are considered to be least toxic. Yes, sir?
That's where your HMIS secondary labeling problem is going to come in.
Yes, because we see 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it isn't 1, 2, 3, 4. It's category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so
What's the hazard and then minimum?
exactly. So this is not going to, again, supplant the HMIS labeling system if we use it at our facility, but we have to be sure that our employees understand. For this label, our HMIS, our NFPA, the higher number, the more hazardous. For our toxic, the category, the lower number is more hazardous. So yes. I guess they're meant to be confusing, right? So.
Job security.
Job security. Are you a regulator? No, okay. Job security.
But I love regulators.
You love I love regulators too. I love regulators too. Did you have a question?
No, I had a comment.
Okay.
The SDSs that are coming out are also labeled 1 through 5, 5. That they're showing the highest is 1.
For the toxic, because the toxic.
On the safety data sheets themselves, they're changing the number system where 1 is high and 5 is low. Not like the nephthodiamonds where 4 is high and 1 is low.
For the different categories.
Right.
Yes. So category 1 is high, category 5 is the least hazardous. Yep. So just like the gentleman had mentioned, that's going to cause confusion for our employees because they're used to seeing the opposite. The higher number, the more hazardous, and they may see 5. What the heck does a 5 mean? Yes, sir.
Did you explain the role of the label in the lower right corner? Why do you have that up there?
Oh, that's just filler. That's just filler.
I mean, so the diamond is red, but that's yellow, and you have a warning of caution, not.
Yeah.
If it's acutely toxic, wouldn't it be danger instead of caution?
Yes, this is just in there for filler. This does not exemplify or represent any of the new labels that are used as part of this system. So if that is confusing, I apologize.
Triangle, the other's diamond.
Yeah, the new labels that you're going to see, they're all the diamond shapes with the red border. So this was just put in there because it looks cool, but it doesn't have anything to do with the new labeling system. So I apologize for the confusion. Apologize for that. Yes, ma'am.
So are they gonna have like a number to do? Is it like the whole placard actually have a 5, a 1, 3?
It will be identified by the category. It won't be a number, it will be placed in a category. If it's toxic, category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it will be expressed based on the category. You won't see just a single. What's that?
You'll just see the skull and crossbones with the red, they're all look the same? Or you have to read, or is it gonna?
Yes, you'll have to read. I'm going to show you a label, not this one in the bottom lower corner, but there is additional information that's going to be put on the label. So these diamond-shaped labels with the red border, this is not the only information that's going to be provided by chemical manufacturers. There's additional information that will be included. But employees, what are they going to look at in most cases? Are they going to read the label? No. They're going to look at that pictogram, skull and crossbone, flame, whatever the case is, and then they're going to discern if it's hazardous or not. Yes, sir.
You were referring to the poison, skull and crossbones, as having categories.
Yes.
The other ones also have, like flammable proposals have separate categories?
No.
Or only the poison can have a category?
Only the poison has categories. Now, there is a hierarchy system. There is a flow chart that OSHA has in that purple book, because there are words that we're going to see on a label. Danger in warning. In danger is more hazardous than something that is identified with the word warning. So there's a flow chart, a system that chemical manufacturers have to use to determine if they have to mark it as danger or mark it as warning. So the categories, that is only for our toxic materials. Only for our toxic material. Great question. Any other? Yes?
You were saying that the chemical manufacturers are going to be the ones to put all the labeling on products. However, my question is, when you have things that are going to be on the site for a long time, say, for example, it's a cylinder that's going to be containing gases, is there an exemption period where if this was placed on site, like obviously we have to have it labeled by June 1st, 2016. So if something was manufactured prior to December 1st of this year or something like that, is there an exemption?
That is a super question, my God. That is a super question. There is no exemption per se that says after this date, if you store it, have it at your facility, that it has to be marked with this label used by the manufacturer. What is required is by June of 2015, chemical manufacturers, when they ship these materials, they have to use these markings. How we mark it, how we label it at our facility, isn't one and the same how the chemical manufacturer labels it per se. So if you have something that is there prior to June of 2015, OSHA is not going to come in and cite you because it hasn't been labeled by the chemical manufacturer. As long as it displays the hazards, it's marked, it's labeled, you're good. What's that?
Any lawyers in the house?
It,
And how are they going to know if it's something that's been on site for years or, not everything is obvious?
it doesn't matter because it's only the chemical manufacturers who have to affix or apply these labels. Yep. So it doesn't matter if it was there prior to June of 2015, after June 2015, we have to label it. This is how the chemical manufacturer has to label it when it's shipped, when it's ordered, when we purchase it, when we get it for our use at our facility. We could rip all these labels off and we could use a HMIS label. We're covered.
Wait, you say we have to label, so we should, technically, we should be going out and getting these.
No. Because the labeling system that we employ at our facility isn't necessarily going to change. This is a labeling system that the chemical manufacturers are using that is going to change. And the reason that OSHA is doing this is because, again, global harmonization. So how we classify things here in the United States, same way, we use the same definitions for flammables, toxics that they're using in Europe. So if we're shipping things internationally, ordering materials internationally, we get something from Canada, we see that exclamation mark, means the same thing here in the U.S. to our employees as it does in Canada.
So is this more of a DOT shipping thing
No,
rather than a regular note?
nope. Even though the labels look similar, The definitions used by OSHA are not necessarily one and same as how DOT qualifies their hazardous materials. So this does not supplant, replace any DOT marking or labeling requirements. Yes, ma'am.
So then, is there a
Why are we here? We don't have to label these.
Well, here's the thing, I can see possibly, it's based on like the way you mentioned about what they're using to call it, it's going up level 3 or whatever.
Category.
Category 3. If I'm a manufacturer of a material and I'm sending out a drum, and I have NFPA, now I also have the DOT placarding, and I've got all the descriptions of the code, and now I'm sticking this on there too, and I've got maybe 3 of those, and so you've got like placarding to the nth degree, and so is there gonna be a chance that there is a flammable placard for
That OSHA and DOT accepts?
for DOT?
I would say absolutely not. Do not count on that. Do not count on that. Absolutely not. And some of it may be a little redundant, but no.
You're not gonna see a conflict between something, especially the ones that look very similar to DOT placarding and stuff.
You know what? I'm sure there is going to be a conflict. Absolutely, there's going to be a conflict because, again, some of these are so similar to the DOT labels that some people may surmise that they could use these in place of the DOT labels, which is absolutely not the same. OSHA doesn't care what DOT or how DOT tells you to label it. OSHA cares about this. DOT doesn't care how OSHA tells you to label it. They care how they want you to mark and label it. So, good questions. Can I just tell you folks, please don't shoot the messenger. I didn't author, support, write these revisions. So I'm just, we're sharing information today, so. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, which facilities is this going to apply to? You mentioned chemical manufacturers. Is there like a definition of chemical manufacturer or what?
Anyone that manufactures, ships, produces chemicals, and they have to label them and provide a material safety data sheet rather than whatever labeling system they're using now, they're going to use these labels.
Are they defining what a chemical is?
What
Is it something simple like shampoo, or is there, smaller size containers?
Oh, so if they're, the system, the hierarchy, it's all outlined within that purple guidebook, where chemical manufacturers, they go through, if it meets this definition, then it has this label associated with it. So that's something that the chemical manufacturer would have to figure out or determine. Now, some of our shampoo, some of those materials may potentially be or cause detriment to the environment, kill fish, etc. But again, that label, and we're going to see that in a second here, that's not mandatory. So I don't imagine that those cosmetic products, even though they may meet that classification, that a manufacturer would be inclined to put those labels on it, because you're probably not going to feel good about washing your hair with that label that shows a dead fish and tree on it. So, yes, sir.
So you just broadened the requirement from manufacturers to manufacturers, ships, provides. So we have a large company with a materials department that takes in materials, repackages, and then reships.
Okay.
Are they required to have?
No, it's the manufacturer that produces that material. You're shipping it, no. So you don't have to worry about putting those labels on there. Good discussion. I appreciate your guys' feedback. Especially, I was dreading this after lunch, trying to keep you folks entertained. Yes, sir.
Just one point back on this transportation thing. I thought on your timeline, though, there was something that said at a certain point, a shipper should not transport something that isn't properly labeled, though. Is that correct? So if you receive something from a manufacturer, it's not correct with placards, you couldn't ship that out from your warehouse.
For DOT?
I'm saying with these new labels, they didn't have the new SDS or the new placard.
You probably shouldn't, but when it is in transit, it's in transit. If it is not properly labeled in accordance with the OSHA regulations, it's not subject to OSHA regulations per se. It's subject to DOT regulations when it's in transit. But yeah, if you're a transporter, you don't want to transport something if you don't have the SDS, any sort of emergency response information or anything. All right, environmental toxicity. Environmental toxicity, and this is one that's not mandatory. Yes, ma'am. Just so you know, we have a cap on 5 questions, so you're close.
So since we have to have the training by December 1st, is the training going to give us any kind of certification or anything like that to prove that we've had the training?
Yeah, you're getting scanned in and out.
No, I mean the employees that have to be trained, you know, the ones that are going out in the field, the ones that aren't here in this class.
Oh,
Does prove that, you know, our employees at our companies have had the necessary training. Is there any kind of certification or anything that's going to show that they've had that?
that is dependent on you to provide the certification as the employer. So as you train your folks, what I would suggest, you want to make sure you document it, because if you don't document it, you didn't do it. So you have a sign-in sheet, maybe you put together a brief test, quiz, something where you could document that they have received this information. No, there is not a official that it has to be a 2-hour program, that it has to be a 3-hour program. It simply says employees have to be made aware, trained on the new labeling system and SDSs. So what does that mean? If you're able to document it, I would absolutely say that meets the intent of the standard. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, sir.
So you don't have to demonstrate proficiency?
No. No. Nope. They just have to be made aware, trained on the new labeling system and the SDS. So, yep. Good questions. Good questions. I think you only have one more question in the bank. I know, she's all these super questions.
Got you on the ropes.
I know. I know, my gosh. Environmental toxicity, all right, environmental hazard. This is the only label that OSHA says is not mandatory. So you may or may not see this label. OSHA doesn't mandate that manufacturers have to use these labels. This is the only one that is not labeled. Environmental hazardous substance released in the environment or water will be hazardous, toxic to the environment. Now, and here's the basic element: acute aquatic toxicity. So in California, for hazardous waste, we have the 96-hour fish bioassay, right? 500 milligrams per liter or less. Something is considered to be toxic within California. OSHA is also using 96-hour fish bioassay, and they have what they call acute and chronic, and it is based on the threshold. Acute, 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3, less or equal to 1 milligram per liter is considered acute toxicity 1. Acute 2, greater than 1, equal to or less than 10 milligrams per liter. Acute 3, greater than 10, equal to or less than 100 milligrams per liter. And again, that could be some of our cosmetic products that have surfactants that get into waterways. They may kill fish because it suffocates fish, but I would be hard-pressed to imagine that Suave shampoo is going to be provided with this label on it, even if it met that. And OSHA says they don't have to use that label. So those are acute. Chronic, 1, 2, and 3, a 1/10 of a milligram per liter or less, a milligram per liter or less for chronic 2, and then chronic 3 is also equal to or less than a milligram per liter or less. So that's how OSHA discerns something to be a acute aquatic toxicity material. And they have those 3 different classes, and they don't call them classes. Acute, 1, 2, or 3, chronic, 1, 2, or 3. See this label? As the label identifies, kills fish, harmful to the environment. And this by far is probably one of, I'm kind of a DOT nerd, This by far is one of my favorite DOT labels. It's my favorite DOT label. Yes.
One of the reasons you might not see that in the package is because on the DOT side, if you see that, you might interpret it as reportable quantity material. And if it doesn't meet the threshold, that would not be required. So that would be confusing. So I can see why.
Yeah, in this marine pollutant marking required by DOT, it's not just for reportable quantity materials, it's anything that's listed in Appendix B.
So that
Yeah.
could be confusing.
Yes, we're talking regulations. It's meant to be confusing, right? It's meant to be confusing, yeah. So again, there's some redundancy, absolutely, it could be confusing. All right, and GHS label, and here's an example here. And then signal words. This is going to be very important to your employees. They should be familiar with these signal words. 2 signal words that will appear. You'll either see danger or warning. So in association with whatever labels that apply, so we could easily determine, hey, is toxic, corrosive, flammable, oxidizer, whatever the case is, you will also see those signal words, danger or warning. In how OSHA breaks it down is something that is considered danger, marked as danger, that is more hazardous than something that is marked as warning. Doesn't mean it's going to be or have a different label applied to it, because it could be flammable, danger or warning. It could be corrosive, danger or warning. Warning is not as bad or hazardous as those chemicals that are marked with the word danger. So that's something employees have to be aware of. So however you choose to train your employees, I would make sure they're aware of that, danger and warning. What's worse?
Danger.
Danger. All right, you guys all passed the exam. You're certified. All right. And this is the information include your pictogram, signal words, hazard statement, precautionary statement, product identifier. So this will give you that information. Supplier identification, supplemental information. So this information will be on your label, and this is kind of a breakdown how a label will look, and you can see that pictogram at the top. And again, that is one of the big differences, and absolutely is confusing. Those diamond-shaped labels, we use a lot of the same pictograms that DOT uses. The difference has to be a red border for the OSHA. So are we going to see drums, containers that have this label, red border? It may be a skull and crossbone, and then we have a DOT label, a white label with black border? Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Was there, yes ma'am?
So going back to the danger or warning, is there a criteria in the purple Bible?
Yes, yes. If it meets this, identify it with danger. If it meets this, identify it with warning. Super question. Yes, yes. We don't have to determine if we apply the word danger or warning to it. That's done by the chemical manufacturer on the flow charts that's outlined, provided to them by OSHA. Yes. But definitely something that is germane, important for our employees to know. If they see the word danger, that's more hazardous than something marked with the word warning. Yes, sir.
The new SDSs, are they the same ones they're using in Europe right now? Identical? Are they going to be identical to those?
Yes, they're using the same format, the same layout. Yes. Yep. Coffee? Am I putting you to sleep? You know what? Sometimes honesty isn't totally appreciated. All right, so here's an example. Product name, you can see our placard there, our label, signal word, physical health hazards. So this is something that is forthcoming. We're going to see in, I apologize, the yellow label toxic, it isn't going to look like that. It has to have the pictogram with the red border. It has to have the word danger or warning. So I apologize for adding that. And if I could be honest with you, I didn't put this presentation together, so I'm going to blame it on my colleague who did it. So I'll let them know. Kyle, everything went great except that stupid picture you put in there. Yes, sir.
The, towards the bottom where it says precautionary measures and pictograms,
Mm-hmm.
what goes in that blue one, and what other pictograms did you have in there?
I couldn't tell you exactly what is intended or what's going to go in there. It could be W with a line through it. It could be safety glasses. Some of the pictograms that you may see on a HMIS label for the type of personal protective equipment to use. So that is supplemental information. Again, this information up here, this is the minimum that is required by OSHA. Good question. Great question. Great question. You're elevating your status. Danger, warning, more severe, less severe. Yes, ma'am. Why didn't you sit up front? That's good. I'm getting my exercise today. Yes.
So on that last slide where you're showing the layout of the label, yeah. So if the manufacturer has more than one picture that they need to put up there.
More than one diamond?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are they gonna be lined up at the top like this? And then when it comes to like acute 1, 2, or 3 and chronic 1, 2, or 3, that kind of thing, like where, so obviously signal work is warning or danger.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
where does the acute and the chronic levels go?
Supplemental information, and they will be laid out across the top in like DOT where we have primary and subsidiary labels in some instances. There is a hierarchy of something as flammable and toxic, which label is identified or used first.
You could
Please.
literally have a row of diamonds going
You
across.
may have a row of 2 or 3 diamonds. Again, something has to meet the definition outlined by OSHA to be considered that specific hazard class. Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I'm already starting to see fallout from this with manufacturers. Under the old HAZCOM standard, there was a whole lot less to write on a HAZCOM label from a manufacturer. And under the new standard, there is potentially a lot more verbiage. And what
So
I'm
the writing is becoming smaller?
Oh, yeah. So here's the consequence. One, you got all these diamonds, and then you have all the verbiage. And for example, and I don't mean to make an example of them, but J.T. Baker, very common.
Anyone from J.T. Baker here?
They're already well ahead of the curve with these labels. But because there's so much information, they have shrunk the fonts for everything. And one of the consequences is we receive gallon bottles, and it used to be very clear, acetone, IPA, very clear, big, bold letters, 18, 24, 36 point font. They've reduced this, and we have had multiple incidents in our facility where technicians are grabbing the wrong bottle, and they're not looking at these labels, and it's much harder in some cases to figure out. There are no color-coded tops anymore. So you want to, when you start to train people, one of the things you need to do is train them to slow down and actually read. Because these bottles, the labels are so dense, the fonts are getting so much smaller, and the manufacturers are scrambling for space on the container to get all of this stuff in. And what I've seen in the last year is the negative consequence of providing all of this information is that people are not, it's just not as easy to see. And so we've had HCl substituted for HF, and we've had acetone substituted for IPA. And if you're in process manufacturing, those are things you don't want to see. But
That is a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, because all this excess, is it overlooked? Probably, absolutely, and it's a detriment to potential health and safety.
The positive is they're providing all of this new information, and you can become very well versed in the chemistry that you use, but you got to read it. And the negative is people don't read.
Especially true with small containers, you're saying.
Well, yeah, yeah, I mean, I've seen it on gallon bottles. That's where I've had the problem.
I scared off 2 people.
Okay.
You
But,
folks have a wonderful afternoon. I won't hold it against you.
you know, I seriously suggest that anybody who, you know, has chemicals at the facility, start looking at what's coming in at the dock, and you will start to see the changes. You'll start to see it on the cardboard boxes. You'll start to see it on the bottles. Many of the major manufacturers are well ahead of the curve here. But there are positive and negative consequences to this.
Great point, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I have a question of a neophyte there, and positive is awesome. What are those references for? From what code? What is that?
Oh, this isn't the code. That is from the Purple Book. From the Purple Book, and I'm going to give you a link. That is a awesome question, and just for that awesome question, I'm going to give you a link to the Purple Book. So you could actually go to that section. That's not from 1910, 1200, anything like that where it's referenced. That's within the Purple Book. So danger warning. Substances, mixtures, again, there's a hierarchy, and here's an example of a label that you're going to see. You can see we have multiple pictographs, we have the danger words, so these are things that are forthcoming. Some instances may already be employed or used by chemical manufacturers. And here is our concern, our comment. You can see we have these labeled. Outside this label, that red label, that is a DOT label. So again, this labeling, even though it's similar to DOT, it does not supplant DOT. So it very well could be a case where we have not only all this information condensed into a label on the outside of a package or a container, but we also have additional labeling required on the outside of that package. I'll tell you what we're going to do, folks. They're all right. So here, again, here's another instance. Just what was asked, we have a label and a DOT label. So some of these definitely kind of almost in some cases may contradict or convolute the issue. Now, this is another major change. Our format for our material safety data sheets, our MSDSs, are soon to no longer exist. They will be replaced with safety data sheets. The information is going to be one and the same, but the format, the sequence, the layout is now mandated by OSHA, by the HAZCOM standard. And there are 16 specific sections. It doesn't matter who we provide or who provides those chemicals to us, who prepares those SDSs. These sections will all be the same. So these sections, section 1, doesn't matter who the chemical manufacturer is, we're going to find the same information. Now, of the 16, 12 of those specific sections are mandated or required. I'll point out the ones that are not. So section 1, identification, substance, mixture, name of the supplier. Doesn't matter who the manufacturer supplier is, that information is going to be in section 1. Hazards identification, that's section 2. Section 3, composition information on ingredients. 4, our first aid measures. So again, across the board, these sections will be laid out one and the same. Yes, sir?
Is there any requirement that the SDS be good as opposed to being crappy?
I mean, I guess that's one of those subjective things like a super question and a great question. You know what? Again, this is the minimum. So some of them are probably going to be more informative than others, but whether it's a good one or a crappy one, at least the sections will be one and the same. So, but yeah. Yes, sir.
Actually, as a follow to that, are they still going to be able to do non-hazardous ingredients not listed or listed as non-haz or proprietary, or do they actually have to list things to some extent under the new one?
Common names, synonyms. So it's going to be listed here. If they have those proprietary blends, they could hold those. Yep. So section 4, first aid. Section 5, firefighting. 6, accidental release measures. Section 7, handling in storage. Section 8, exposure control, personal protective equipment. 9, physical chemical properties. 10, stability reactivity. 11, toxicological information. 12 is ecological information. In the 4 sections that are not mandated or required by OSHA are section 12, 13, 14, and 15. So there's 16 sections, but if you see a SDS with 12 sections, because 12, 13, 14, 15 are not included, that is acceptable, because those sections are not mandatory. So you may or not see section 12, 13 disposal considerations, and this is one of the areas that's crappy, especially for us in California, right? Because potentially anything could be hazardous, or in most cases you see dispose of according to all applicable federal, state, local regulations. So, section 14, transport information, and here's our UNID number, proper shipping name, packing group, all that information, which has changed this year, has changed with those global harmonized standards for DOT shipments. Section 15, regulatory information. Section 16, other information. Preparation, review of the SDS. So those are the 16 sections. Any questions on the SDS? Any questions on the SDS? You don't have any questions? All right.
You already identified it.
Good, good. Yes, ma'am.
Who regulates those sections that OSHA's not requiring?
Who regulate? They're not mandated, so they don't have to be there. Nope, they don't. Yep, yep. So 16, 12 are mandatory, required by OSHA. All right, in these links here are the purple book. So if you write down that link, this will take you to the purple book. It is 500 pages, and I promise you, any of you folks that are going to download this book, you're probably going to start out with good intentions. And once you begin going through it, you're going to think, oh my gosh, danger, warning, pictogram, that's what I care about. That's what I care about. Because this is more the tool, the guide for the chemical manufacturers to use the flow charts, the hierarchy, whether they have to apply danger warning, if it meets one of these specific hazard classes, if it meets a definition, if it's category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you know how when you go to the OSHA site, they have their HAZCOM training?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to change that?
They are, but that does not have to be updated. We do not have to come, until June 2016. Employees have to be trained new labels, SDSs by December 1st of this year. But between now and June of 2016, we could comply with these GHS standards, or we could comply with the current HAZCOM regulations. So that's at our discretion. That is at our discretion. And this is everyone's favorite slide. You folks have a, yes, sir.
Just real quick, on OSHA's website, they got fact sheets, one-page documents covering
Yes.
the SDSs and the Pictogram.
And they also have a 5-page sheet with questions and answers, and it breaks it down. There's a lot of info. You're not going to find anything Cal OSHA. It's all at the Fed OSHA website.